resolve it.
Okay, if we could please reconvene. I'll give you a little bit to settle in.
Do you need jumping jacks or stretches out there? Well, you're standing for a while. That was smart.
All right, Chancellor Harris.
Thank you, President Bacher, members of the board. We're going to make a slight adjustment in order here. One of our colleagues has to slip out and catch a plane, so we're going
I
to
didn't get
move
my swag
online
back.
education up to right now. Let Patrick fill you in on that, and then we'll fall right back into the regular order. Again, I want to thank the board for your patience and your persistence. We brought a lot to you today, and we have a few more items to bring you up to date on, and I think we will look to get to public testimony by 4 o'clock. So with that, Patrick, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor. So this is an update on the Online Education Initiative. Currently, distance education up and down the state is very much a local and district-run enterprise. There's not a whole lot that is done centrally. This creates a very different environment for students who are taking distance ed courses at different institutions. They're all seeing different course management and learning environments up and down the state. There's no real open marketplace or location where students can go and find the entire catalog of online and distance ed courses available to them, nor is there a place where campuses can go and aggregate the demand for online and distance ed courses by students. And what we're finding now is that in any given term, you're looking at about a third of the students in our system are taking at least one online course, or about half of the students in their entire academic career are taking some type of online course. So it is something that is used quite heavily now by students to fill out their student education plan. So with this and the governor's desire to expand distance ed in the state comes the Online Education Initiative, which actually was funded in the prior year. The stated goal here is to increase the number of students who obtain associate degrees and transfers by providing online courses and services. What it really means is we're building a system-wide enterprise, what we refer to as online education ecosystem. It's a whole bunch of things that are used to support very good online delivery. They include a single enterprise course management system that can be or will eventually be open for all campuses to use at no cost. 24/7 support services that go along with that. That's a very difficult thing for campuses to service. They just don't have the capability of doing 24/7, but a lot of students are on late at night. And simple things like, I can't get my password, I need something reset, will cause them literally to drop and withdraw classes. And so just having that type of support will greatly enhance student success. There will be migration services for faculty to move into this new online system. There will be course design services available to faculty. There will be a lot of staff development to get faculty, up on the current ways of doing very good quality online education. We will address online tutoring and online proctoring, and also identity management, which is something I think that was asked earlier. I can't tell you exactly how it will be done, but it will be addressed. That's not what you meant?
No.
Okay.
The thing about students from other states taking the courses.
Okay. Well, it actually,
Authentication.
yeah, the authentication is kind
Well,
of.
you have to have agreements with states, and
Oh.
there are state laws.
You're talking about reciprocity? No? Okay. Okay.
We'll come back to you.
Well, LeBaron did a webinar on it.
Sarah,
Is it Sarah? Okay. All right. We do have an existing website, web portal called cvc.edu. It stands for California Virtual Campus, and that will be the location where all of this will be built out and headquartered. The current status of this is we are nearing a stage where we're going to request for proposals. We've split this up into 3 groups of 8 pilot campuses. There will be a set of campuses that pilot the actual course management system. There will be a set of campuses that pilot what we call student readiness staging. So one of the things that is a best practice here is for new students to distance ed, getting them acquainted with the online system helps them greatly in student success, and so they don't withdraw and make it through the end of the term. Also how to manage their time in an online environment. So we'll have another group that pilots readiness, and then a third group that pilots online tutoring, which is something that also will be needed. There's also a whole other set of academic affairs and student services aspects to this that'll have to be worked out. How do you get online student services delivered in this environment? How do students' registration priorities cross from one institution to the other? All those will be things that we have to work out. But that is a summary of where we're going and where we're at.
Member Malumed?
Are all teachers in the community college system going to get trained?
I would say a highly desired goal would be all teachers who wish to teach in an online environment. You know, if they are seeking to teach an online course, we would love to have some type of staff resource or certification program for them.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing I would add is that I think, and this is overgeneralized, but it would be, I think, our goal to try to have all of our students have some of their education online, as opposed to having some of our students having all of their education online. Now, there'll be some exceptions to that, but in this environment, increasingly, students need to have that, just like, you know, a decade ago, they needed to learn how to use a computer. Well, now they need to learn how to do whatever their work is in relationship to the internet and working online. So this, we believe, begins to provide them with a greater percentage of them with that opportunity.
I used the wrong terminology. It's state authorization.
Oh, state authorization. In other words, for a student to get credit in California, if they're a student in Colorado,
Right.
they have to authorize. Yeah,
And those agreements, and that the federal laws on abeyance until sometime in 2015, but that doesn't displace the state laws that are in place. And he went through a lot of information that I think it would be helpful to hear.
good. We will loop back and provide that.
State authorization,
Yeah.
sorry.
Dr. Gornick here was asking me when. We're looking to have everybody at least in full pilot in 2015. And then my guess is after that, if it all works, as campuses cycle off of their existing distance ed contract, they would be open and free to move on to the new system. Also, don't want to overlook the fact that this also is a tremendous economy of scale as far as purchasing power for the system. And if it's done correctly and efficiently, that would free up a whole lot of local money for other things.
Marvelous.
So to me, what comes up is a question of equity. So the question is, you know, do we have students who have access to computers at home or access to computers to do online training or online actual coursework? Is that something we've thought about, something we've talked about, you know, and what are we doing to help those students?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is a concern. I think if you go on any one of our campuses today, you will see huge open computer labs. So students do, generally speaking, have access. The challenge, of course, is that a lot of students do their work at midnight or at 2 in the morning, and no, they don't have access at that point. So it is something we're mindful of, and we are trying as best we can to make as much availability as possible on campus. But it certainly is a concern and one we need to continue to pay attention to.
And my question is, for example, can we check out computers, right? Could students actually, could we, you know, get some sort of donations or work with partnerships and figure out if we can, you know, have a computer assigned to a student so that they can actually check it out if they can't afford one? You know, things like that just are temporary fixes for students who need that resource.
Well, I think that's certainly a great suggestion. I know some of our colleges have experimented with iPad availability or tablet availability. I don't know about laptop availability, but that's certainly something we ought to be looking at.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
As we move into the next item, the one other postscript on Patrick's report I would remind all of us, and that is that we at the Chancellor's Office do not see ourselves in development of courses and content. That's faculty responsibility at the colleges. Our product or program that we're talking about is designed to make it easier for students to use it while maintaining the authority of the faculty to develop courses at the college level. The next item really dovetails into comments by Member Avalos and Budnick earlier in today to talk about how we communicate with students. So I'm going to introduce the guy that's responsible for taking all these wonderful products that we produce and making certain that the public, especially the students, and which tends to be a younger demographic, knows that they're available. So with that, Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chancellor. I wanted to talk briefly this afternoon about 3 marketing and outreach campaigns that we work very hard on in the Communications Office in support of your twin goals of improving access and improving student success. And I want to show you some treatments for all 3 campaigns. It'll kind of give you an idea of the approaches that we take. And I cannot promise you Kanye West, but some of the talent is pretty good. The first initiative that I want to speak about is the I Can Afford College campaign, which is about 10 years old now. Back in 2003, 2004, there was an increase in student fees decided on by the legislature and the administration, and there was concern about the negative effects that might have on access. So the legislature appropriated some money for a statewide campaign to raise awareness about the availability of financial aid and to provide some outreach to students, letting them know that community college is affordable, to help cover the fees, the books, and in some cases even housing. So the approach is twofold. One is an advertising campaign that uses radio and online advertisements to reach the target audience. The primary audience is low income, 16 to 24-year-olds. And then we have a component that is outreach, face-to-face outreach in high schools, on community college campuses, at concerts, wherever young people are likely to be found, students, prospective students. And over the course of the 10 years that we've been running this campaign, the percentage of students, or the number of students who are availing themselves of financial aid has increased by 70%. And we get about 350,000 unique viewers to this website. This is the resource website every year. And I'm going to show you a 30-second video that you can find online. This is one of our videos. We used to be able to do cable TV. The purchasing power for this campaign has eroded quite significantly because the appropriation never went up. It's still at the same amount that it was 10 years ago. But you can find this maybe on an online advertisement. So let me just play this for you.
ICanAffordCollege.com. Get the money you need to go to college today. Sign up online to get financial aid. Dollars set aside in reserve for the college education you know you deserve. Financial aid for college, no need to say please. Get the money to go to school, not just college fees. Count it up, break it down, sign it up, make it now. ICanAffordCollege.com.
At the California Community Colleges, financial aid is available year-round. Visit ICanAffordCollege.com.
Okay. So the second campaign that we want to talk about is the Associate Degree for Transfer. This is a campaign that we've been working very closely with our counterparts at California State University on for the last 2 years. It involved building out a website that's a resource for students to learn about the Associate Degree for Transfer program, what the degree really is, the fine print. There's a tool that allows you to find the different AAT and AST degrees that are offered at specific community college campuses, and then do a crosswalk to find the CSU campus that recognizes and accepts those degrees once they're achieved. We have, this started with a grant from Complete College America, about a $300,000 grant that we leveraged into a $1.1 million campaign. Unfortunately, there's never been any state appropriation for this outreach, so we've sort of had to look between the cushions on the couch and cobble together budgets and raise the money, find the money to go online with advertising and go on the radio with advertising. And I can play for you a radio spot that you might hear actually in the next couple of weeks.
Hey, big guy. Hey, you look familiar. I'm you in 20 years. What's up with the Sunday suit? Business suit. It's because we earned 2 college degrees. Cool, how'd we do that? We enrolled in our local community college and earned an associate degree for transfer. That gave us guaranteed admission to a CSU where we earned our bachelor's. And since we didn't waste time with classes we didn't need, we saved money. So, go to adegreewithaguarantee.com or talk to someone in the school counselor's office. Nice. I'm glad we did that. Get started at adegreewithaguarantee.com.
A degree with a guarantee. Yeah. And the latest initiative that we've been involved with and partnering with the Foundation for California Community Colleges is the Step Forward campaign. This was made possible with a grant by the Kresge Foundation, and the foundation actually did the professional work on this, the creative execution for the collateral material and for the website design. And the purpose of this campaign is to raise awareness and communicate with students about the value of priority registration, how to get it, how to keep it, why it's important, focusing on orientation, assessment, and education planning. It's integrated into CCC Apply, which is the common application. So if when students complete their application to a specific college, they're then directed to this site, and they get the campus-specific information about orientation, what the requirements are for assessment that's based on the college that they've actually selected. We launched this actually 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and we expect that we're going to make a push to raise the profile of this campaign for the spring enrollment period coming up. One component of it is a video, instructional video that uses. These were all produced. These students that you see are all our students, and they were filmed on our campuses. So.
Priority registration, it's one step at a time. Orientation, assessment, and educational planning. It gives you that sense of direction, it gives you that foundation. It made it very difficult for me to fail.
Having the priority registration made me realize the steps that I needed to take in order to be successful.
When you complete those steps, you have a greater understanding of what you're gonna have to go through to achieve your goal, and that's really what it's about. These steps are about completing your goals.
During orientation, they show you how to register for classes, where to drop classes, pay for classes.
Doing it online really helped me understand where I could go if I had questions, where I could go if I needed something.
You'd set up an appointment for a placement test. It's not a pass or fail, it's just see what level math or English you're currently at.
Even if you're at the lowest point in the math or the English, I think it's better to have a recipe for success.
So you don't get placed into a class that you're not ready for.
I know that if I hadn't had to take those classes in math where the assessment had placed me, I wouldn't have had the tools or the skills to pass a college-level math class.
Having an educational plan was awesome because I'm a visual learner. I like to see everything in a picture, like right in front of me.
It gives you a vision of what you're going to take, what you're going to learn.
You figured out enough what you want to do, what you're interested in, and where your priorities lie.
You have to choose your classes earlier, and in choosing your classes, you set your priorities.
I mean, I thought that this time would last forever, and all of a sudden, this is my last semester. There's going to be a lot of things that you don't want to do, but this is absolutely necessary, and you are going to be so grateful that you did it.
Right, that's it.
Cool.
Great. Very good. Thank you very much. Comments? Member Avalos?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. This is powerful stuff, good videos. The question around, what's our Facebook approach? What's our Instagram approach, our Twitter approach? Do we have any of that strategy developed for the tweens? Because, if I think about my daughters, they don't watch any TV, right? They watch everything online. They don't listen to radio. They get it all from iTunes. And so, for the most part, they don't really, this kind of stuff really doesn't apply to them for the most part. So the question is, what are we doing for those people who are like my daughters?
Well, the videos are mainly shown online, and we do have a social media support for the I Can Afford College campaign, Twitter and Facebook. Basically, the agency that we contract with supports. We've found that for the associate degree for transfer, the questions that we anticipated were, you have to have a very high degree of accurateness in the response, and we don't have the capacity really to provide those responses. I wish we did. Wish we had a budget to do that. But we cross-promote it from our chancellor's office, social media platforms, to promote the other campaigns as well.
I do think Member Avalos brings up a really critical point. The I Can Afford College campaign has been funded over a decade, and you heard the results, 70% more students accessing financial aid. And by the way, that was done when we were rationing education. And a lot of people think, well, why were we running those ads? Well, one of the reasons we continued to run the ads was because the students who are most financially disadvantaged were also being told there weren't any courses. So continuing to run those ads helped keep those numbers up as much as we could. But the Step Forward campaign, and especially the Associate Degree for Transfer campaign, it does not have any funding. And it is really unfortunate that we have this wonderful transfer agreement with CSU, and we have to cobble together a little bit of money to try to get the word out to folks. So we went to the legislature this year and asked for them to consider funding an outreach program. They weren't prepared to do that, but believe me, we're going back to finance and the administration in the next round to try again to get them to fund an outreach campaign. This Associate Degree for Transfer program will only fulfill its potential when two things happen. Students know about it, and the seats are available when they get to the CSU.
So I'd like
Vice
to follow
President
up on
Vaughn.
my comment, if
I'm
that's
sorry,
okay.
go ahead.
So I went on to I Can Afford College website, Facebook site, and 4,499 likes. That's really small, right? So, to me, it's like, I don't know what we're doing to promote that site, but 4,500 likes is very minimal.
Yeah, we can do better there, for sure.
So I just have, first off, thanks for the presentation. I have a couple of things I wanted to add, but one's also a philosophical question too that we should talk about as a board, is that how can we as a board tap into some extraordinary expertise on our board? Member Budnick is obviously involved in the entertainment industry. Member Avalos is a pioneer in the whole social media effort, and others members have other expertise, but we also are a governing board, and so we focus on policy. So at some point, I'd love to have a conversation how we can tap into the individual expertise in a meaningful way, so that if there are strategies that Member Avalos or Member Budnick might be able to share, that we could take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
Too.
Especially as it relates to, getting students to utilize it more. I mean, if we have a quality product and we can't get anybody to use it, then, we're not fulfilling the mission.
Then my other question too is the one related to what we'd spoken about. Having been in marketing, if we are marketing a degree with a guarantee and we can't keep that promise 2 years from now, we're setting ourselves up for a real challenge too. So I don't know. Do we have a strategy 2 years from now when the people that were told they got the guarantee are now being put to the, waiting for a spot to open up as well? And that's something I know that we're going to just have to wrestle with too. My last, though, is that I'm very excited because I was talking to Member Vice Chancellor Feast, because I will be at the Rose Bowl. There's going to be 150,000 fans coming Thursday, Friday, and Saturday this week because One Direction and 5 Seconds of Summer are playing. I'm bringing my 10-year-old daughter and my 14-year-old niece to that show, and Paul says that there's going to be a booth at the concert for the I Can Afford College campaign. So I'll be able to observe firsthand the street team in action for I Can Afford College. So I can't wait to see that.
Member Budnick.
Quick question. Does the Degree with a Guarantee website fall under your shop?
Yes.
The only thing is it's just confusing to me when you go to choose a degree. Are you saying that you go to mathematics, California Community Colleges are listed on the left, California State Universities are listed on the right? Are all of those universities, are they the ones that are the automatic guaranteed transfer? Or are they just the list of the California State Universities? Because it seems like all of them are included.
Yeah, actually, the search function is going to be replaced in the next week or so.
Oh,
and they'll
good.
have enhanced
I'm incredibly
ability to crosswalk between the different degrees and the CSU campuses that
Will you let me
they're
know when that's up
recommending.
and running?
Yeah.
'Cause this is awesome. Thanks.
But in theory, in the core areas, all of the CSUs will be functional. See what I mean? Like in the main areas, all of them will be.
I think the only thing to be sure of is on the main page when you enter the website, it says, guess what, in highlighted guaranteed transfer. But when you get to the degree, there's a whole paragraph of stuff and it never says anything about a guaranteed transfer. So literally you could say California Community Colleges guaranteed transfer to California State University. So it's just clear on each page.
Got it.
Just so you know, I mean, if you graduate, you might only get into, is Mendocino on there, or you might only get into Eureka, and you live in LA. Well, that's not so tempting, perhaps. So it doesn't.
You don't need to sell that part.
I'm just saying, right?
Probably shouldn't sell that
Available,
part.
but you may not get into many.
I wouldn't sell that on the website.
No.
Any other comments? Vice Chancellor Feast, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Chancellor?
Thank you. We're going to ask Dan Troy to give you a quick primer on three sort of long-held regulations that our system operates under. They are rules that we all know and love, and they are always controversial, and yet we're proud of the fact that our colleges work very hard to live up to those. So Dan, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you, Chancellor Harris. So as you may or may not know, my division is, among other things, responsible for fiscal accountability, fiscal standards, and often compliance of any number of issues on a daily basis. So we maintain the budget and accounting structure for the system. We, in conjunction with our chief business officials across the state, will develop the budget accounting manual. We do any number of fiscal reports throughout the year. So these are all issues that go on a daily basis in our division. But there are two items in particular I wanted to bring to the board's attention today, as these are major issues that also come to the board annually to your attention. So I thought they were worthy of bringing up today. One is the 50% law, which is a law that's been on the books for many years. It's part of our, since the colleges were considered part of the K-12 system. That law has not been modified much since that time, though the community colleges otherwise have changed a great deal in that time. And that law essentially requires colleges to spend at least half of their, as it's called in the statute, current expense of education for salaries of classroom instructors. So essentially, this is their unrestricted fund. They have to spend at least half of it on the salaries and pension benefits of classroom instructors. So our office is in charge of monitoring the compliance for that for our 72 districts annually. And if districts are out of compliance, they can do one of two things. They report to our office, and we'll come up with a plan to cure the deficiency by the end of the fiscal year. Or they can ask the board for an exemption, a full or partial exemption from compliance with the law based on certain factors that are spelled out in regulation. Generally speaking, these are intended for large, unanticipated, unavoidable expenditures that may occur during the year. For some background, in my time here, we've normally had about 3 districts per year, I'd say, that come to the board for an exemption. And in the last year, there were 3, and our office decided that we were not going to recommend that the board adopt those exemptions, thinking that with the passage of Prop 30 and the recovery of the economy to some extent, that districts are going to have to meet a higher standard in order to get our office's recommendation to the board for those exemptions. Annually, these requests for exemption come to the board before March. When those items come up, we will provide not only a thorough analysis of any district exemption we're coming forward with, but also some detailed background on how the 50% law works. The other major issue that comes to the board's attention annually is the full-time faculty obligation number, or the FON as we lovingly call it. The 50% law is statute. There's not much control the board has over that because it is in statute. The FON is actually Title V regulation. The FON was developed as a response to AB 1725, which was passed in 1988. It's a very, really a watershed statute for community college governance. Among the many provisions in that bill includes the stated goal that colleges provide 75% of their credit instruction is provided by full-time faculty. So what the FON does is it does not require that they get to 75%, but what it does do is require that the number of faculty that full-time faculty the district have will increase annually by the percentage increase in their credit FTS. So annually, districts report to us on how they've complied with their FON, and if they don't meet their faculty obligation number, they actually can be assessed a penalty by our district. This is one of the few penalties we actually have in our system. Each November, we bring a recommendation to the board assessing whether or not the budget passed in the months prior provides enough resources for districts to actually implement an increase to the FON should their credit FTS increase for that year. During the economic downturn, the board found for, I believe it was 5 years in a row, that the budget did not provide sufficient resources. In fall of 2013, they found that the budget did provide adequate resources. So that means that if there are increases in the college's credit FTS, that their FON is also going to increase, and they have to hire full-time faculty to meet that FON in the subsequent fall. So this November, at the next meeting, in fact, we'll come to you with a recommendation on whether or not the budget has provided adequate resources to enact the FON for next fall. And that will also include additional information for you on where colleges are in regard to the FON and their full-time faculty instruction, and also any penalties that have been incurred at that time. So,
thank you, Vice Chancellor. Member Ipsy?
It says that it has to go up each year as the enrollment goes up, but are they all starting from a different base?
Yes, they are, and that's one of the issues that we've discussed quite recently in Consultation Council. You had a starting point with your number when the FON was in place, so districts could have been all over the map at that time in terms of having a very high number of full-time faculty or low. And often it's you could look at 2 districts, for example, with the same number of FTS that may have very different FON numbers because of that historical inequity.
Is there a best practice we should be encouraging the colleges to meet? What is the right number?
Well, I think the right number to some is probably defined in the statute as 75%. I think there's certainly a great deal of debate in our system about where that number derives from. Is there any magic to 75% as opposed to 60 or 85 or 90%? I don't think that's a research-based number. I think most would agree generally that all else equal, having more full-time instructors on campus is a good thing. It increases the continuity. They're available for curriculum development and are more likely to have office hours. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that full-time faculty aids student success. But of course, the system does have limited resources, so what does the district want to do with that next dollar? Is it incurring the cost of a full-time instructor or hiring a counselor? And that's part of the issue that we struggle with in the system and being a poorly funded system.
Vice President Bone?
For me, when I was on the Pasadena board, it was always a concern because we always took that 75% number as a good goal and felt that every student is benefited by having a full-time instructor that they have access to after hours. But then when I came to this board, I noticed there's wide disparity. There's some districts that are considered very strong districts that had fewer than 50%. And so I'm hoping that we could help move along towards a certain baseline that is a reasonable threshold, even though I also do feel that districts should have some autonomy in determining how they appropriate the resources. But I was surprised what a broad disparity there was among the system.
Yeah, and clearly it does take resources to increase your full-time faculty over time. I mean, increase the percentage of it over time. And as you'll see in the system budget request tomorrow, we do have an item proposed that would help districts make more progress toward that 75% goal.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Vice Chancellor Troy, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And those two items, the fund and the 50% law, will come back to the board annually, so we'll try to keep you up to date on those. As many of you know, although the governor has expressed a lack of support for categorical funding, we have a lot of it, and the K-12 has a great deal as well. We've seen some compression of that in recent years, but mainly we saw some real decimating cuts to those categorical programs during the downturn in the economy. So we've asked Linda Michalowski, Vice Chancellor for Student Services, to give you a quick update on the status of those categorical programs. Linda?
Okay. So I included a table in your agenda that just gives you the numbers, where the categorical programs were funded in 2008-9 before the budget cuts, and where they are today. In 2009-10, and this just concerns the student services categoricals. There are other, there's the basic skills funding was cut in 2009-10. There are several workforce categoricals that Vice Chancellor Tom Quinlivan mentioned earlier. There are several part-time faculty categoricals. Virtually all of them were cut significantly. Student Success and Support Program, which was then the matriculation program, was cut by 52%. EOPS, DSPS, CARE, Cal were cut by 40%. So these were not insignificant. These were major, and colleges, in the case of programs like EOPS, Extended Opportunity Programs and Services, it was that's the oldest of the categoricals. It was created in 1969 to recruit and serve low-income students who were disadvantaged either educationally or culturally or socially, and then several years later, the CARE program was created, Cooperative Agencies Resources for Education, and that is a subset of EOPS, specifically serving single parents who meet the EOPS criteria. So when those programs were cut by 40%, the colleges had two choices. They could either reduce the number of students being served, or they could reduce the services that those students were receiving, or some combination of the two. And so generally the numbers were affected along with the dollars, although not always evenly. As I mentioned earlier, when the Student Success and Support Program was increased last year, it brought the program back to where it was in 2001-2, and as of this year, that program is essentially doubled. Also in this year's, both last year and this year, the EOPS and I'm sorry, both last year and this year, the DSPNS program for disabled students was increased, and with the $30 million that it received this year, it's essentially been restored to where it was before the cuts. The EOPS program is still 25% below its funding in 2008-9. In the meantime, the Student Equity Program was created and received funding of $70 million in this budget. And so when you look at total funding for all of the categorical programs, it has in fact increased significantly. But when you look at the individual programs, the story is not consistent from one to another. I didn't mention specifically the CalWORKS program, but EOPS Care and CalWORKS are essentially the programs designed for intense, you might call them wraparound services for some of our most disadvantaged students. And those are the programs where some of the degree of support that Member Budnick was talking about earlier for our students can come from. I think when we looked at implementing the Student Success and Support Program, part of our approach to that was to recognize that not all students are the same. And we've pretended ever since the matriculation program was created that we could provide the same level of service to every student, but not only can we not do that, that's not even appropriate because not every student needs the same level of service. So I think that with the online initiatives that we are currently working on, we're recognizing that some students, given very good tools, can essentially guide themselves. And by so doing, it means that we will have more resources available to provide one-on-one support for the students who need that deeper level of support. The attitude of the administration for some years has been to provide colleges and districts additional flexibility in how they spend funds provided to support students. In K-12, there were, I think, 23 categorical programs that were consolidated in a block grant several years ago, and they were the magnitude of those programs was much more significant than the categoricals in community colleges, and the implementation of that block granting had some significant impacts, like on adult ed in particular, where in many areas those programs were decimated in order to put that money into the classroom. And clearly the K-12 classrooms needed the money, but it meant that priorities were established locally that served some students and did not serve all students. So the proposals for community colleges have been more modest, but the emphasis has been on providing colleges additional flexibility. And so with the new student equity funding, there's a requirement in the Budget Act, budget trailer bill language, that colleges have to coordinate their student equity plans with all of the existing categoricals that are funded, as well as a whole list of initiatives that some colleges have and some colleges don't have that are not funded. But clearly the intent is that colleges look more holistically at the students who need to be served and establish their own priorities for how they go about doing that. So that's essentially where we are.
Any comments or questions?
I do have a question. So, sir, some programs have been restored, or even, like DSPS has been completely restored. Others, like EOPS, has not. Do we know the rationale for why one and why not the other?
Well, the DSPS advocacy community was very active in the last legislative session, and they made a very compelling case. And in fact, what the legislature did was take 30 million of the funds that had been slated for student equity and specified those for DSPNS.
Part of that argument also be the perception of legal implications
Well, there, certainly.
for one versus the other.
Colleges have legal obligations to provide reasonable accommodations to students. So it may have been part of the sense that colleges were going to have to put money to those expenses anyway, so they were able to dedicate those funds.
Member Sumner?
I'm just wondering, is veterans also included in that disabled one then?
Well, we have no dedicated funding for
Right,
veterans.
but I mean, that might have
certainly
raised-
any veterans with disabilities could be served through.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the
That's why,
additional arguments that many
Uh-huh.
DSPNS directors made
Awareness
with
of
regard
the
to
need, yeah.
the funding, the increased number. Member Belansky?
I think one of the other arguments that came into play was how many students went and filed complaints, because it doesn't cost a student anything to go to the federal government office in your local city and file a complaint, and then you've got to now justify and pay the money at a college as to why you were not providing those services to a student, and to simply say, well, we just didn't get the money from the state is not an argument that you can use. So, I mean, there were strong efforts of saying it's costing us more in other ways. We need to get the money back so that we can better serve the students with disabilities.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Vice Chancellor McCloskey. Chancellor.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is campus climate and safety. I would simply say to the board, in anticipation of introducing Vice Chancellor Stewart, that this is an issue that has exploded like wildfire onto the higher education scene in the last 12 months. Most people would argue probably about 3 or 4 decades too late, but at least it has certainly become a very, very hot topic and a big issue recently. And our own legislative leaders from the state of California have taken a leadership role in this, and Vince is going to bring you up to speed. Vince?
Great, thank you, Chancellor, members of the board. Yeah, I would certainly underscore that this is a issue that has taken off considerably in the last several months, and probably for many of the reasons that you're well aware of, given the media coverage. And I think, the earlier conversation around a safe place to learn for students probably ties into this to some degree as well. But I think, the awareness of some of the recent incidents on college campuses, university campuses, has really driven a policy conversation at both the federal and the state levels. Starting with the federal level, I mean, we've seen the creation of a White House task force that's looking at this issue, looking at ways to develop strategies, funding, initiatives that can prevent campus sexual assaults and educate students, educate faculty, educate staff. So I think that's something that's certainly going to be moving forward the next couple of months. We've seen legislation introduced at the federal level with Senator Boxer and Representative Susan Davis out of San Diego introducing companion legislation to ask colleges, in the case of the UC, and require the CSU and the community colleges to create dedicated individuals on campus to deal with survivors of sexual assault, and to really provide additional resources so students can be more informed, that the colleges can raise the level of awareness. We've seen similar legislation introduced by Senator McCaskill out of Missouri. So there's just a lot of interest right now, given, I think, some of the tragedies that have occurred on campuses and the uneven responses that I think people have seen. So I think wanting to get some level of consistency, and also providing the colleges and the universities with the tools and the resources that they need. Now, there's a lot of history here insofar as colleges and universities already needing to comply with the Federal Clery Act, so there's a lot of reporting that goes on. But I think, some of this conversation is about how do you take and go beyond reporting to actually dealing with education, intervention, and prevention. So I think that's a conversation that definitely is going to continue on. Also, I'll mention on the federal level, there's the American Council on Education that has put out some policy guidance to colleges and universities. So, again, I think that's going to be driving this conversation for many more months to come. At the state level, we've seen the introduction of legislation there as well. There's Senate Bill 967 by Senator Kevin De Leon from the Los Angeles area and the incoming pro tem for the Senate. You may have read about this bill. It would require a definition of informed consent for student relationships. I'll kind of clean up the language a little bit. It's pretty detailed in terms of what's actually in the bill. But I think this is a pretty high standard in terms of ensuring that students are in a safe environment, and if there are sexual relationships between two students, that is definitely something that is of consent on both parts. I think the expectation is that that legislation will likely be viewed favorably by the governor. It had a lot of support, a lot of media attention, and I think a lot of folks felt that the timing was right for something like this to take place. I don't think any of this has been lost on the community colleges, the chancellor's office, and the system generally. In July, we did a survey of our colleges to really look and see how can we assist them in complying with the new federal law that's been put in place, the Campus Save Act, as well as trying to anticipate some of the future things that we think might be on the horizon and how can we be a little more proactive. So the purpose of that survey was to really look and see what sort of technical assistance and guidance that we can provide to the colleges, because that's really, I think, the role that we can best fulfill, given that we have a system of 72 districts and 112, 113 colleges. For the most part, policies around campus security and safety and sexual assault outside of a criminal context are defined at the college level. There are a myriad of agreements in place with colleges in terms of their relationships with local law enforcement, and to what extent do colleges have their own law enforcement, or are they contracting out with other local agencies. So I think the role that we can play is how do we provide that technical assistance to colleges and to really interact with those partnerships they already have in place and ensure that they're in compliance with both the federal requirements that are coming down the line as well as the anticipated state requirements. So I think to that end, we've been talking about perhaps the need of some sort of working group or task force around this issue that could provide specific recommendations, not only for what's already been proposed and passed, but also for what might be coming in the future. I think we've got at least one Assembly Select Committee that's been looking at this issue. They've held a series of hearings around the state about campus safety issues generally and what's going on, how are they being addressed. There have been some relatively high-profile issues on some campuses here in California. The U.S. Department of Education has a list that it's issued in terms of identifying those colleges around the country that have ongoing investigations. So there's that issue that we're dealing with. So I think when you combine that with what has already been said among some members of the state legislature in leadership positions, that they want to do more, and I would anticipate in the next legislative session we will see more proposals about how do we ensure that our students have that safe learning environment, that having the conversation early, and we can provide, I think, recommendations, ideas, because in many respects you get a lot of well-intended efforts, but they're coming from folks who aren't necessarily on the ground working with colleges. Certainly they're not always college administrators, so I think it's how do we inform that conversation with the people who are sort of at the front lines of ensuring that there's a safe and welcoming environment for not only students, but I think it translates to faculty and staff and all those who come in contact with our campuses. So that's kind of the very general lay of the land of what's been happening recently around campus safety and security, and certainly welcome input and questions from the board.
Any comments?
I just have a question in terms of clarification. On page 1 of this handout that we got, it mentions that there's student mental health program funds that are provided from the state level. Do all of the community colleges get those funds?
You know, that's a good question, and I'm going to turn to my colleague Linda and put her on the spot, because I don't know if all of the colleges receive those funds or not.
They do. That's federal Title IV financial aid. That's Pell Grants,
Oh,
student
it's
loans.
through financial aid.
So yes, they all do receive
Okay.
those funds.
So I should mention that one of the levers for compliance with both the state and the federal proposals is that if you don't comply, you'll lose the federal funds.
NHWA, got it, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Vice Chancellor Stewart, thank you very much.
Yeah, the other postscript I would say is that, as Vince suggested, this is not just a California Community College issue. Both UC and CSU are facing this and having pretty robust conversations. And as Vince said, we're going to start with consultation and see if there's a way to cause a system-wide dialogue so that, you know, Senator Boxer has requested that we consider voluntarily endorsing her proposal. And I understand, Vince, did you tell me the UC is considering doing that?
My understanding is that they have endorsed that legislation.
So we're going to have that conversation internally, and we'll be back to you probably in November with some more information.
And so the board knows we are on support, on record with SB 967, the state legislation.
Vice President Bond, did you?
That was just the question, what was the role of the board going forward? Are there any specific steps?
Okay, thank you. Before I get to the last item, let me cover quickly a couple things that Member Blasky asked about early today that we haven't talked about. The first of those is community service courses and the changes. As the board will recall, as part of the financial downturn between 08-09 and 11-12, the legislature made their intention fairly clear that we focus our resources and our energies on career technical education, remediation and basic skills, and transfer education. And so what that meant was a sort of a de-emphasizing of the community service plank of our mission, and to some extent workforce development and education as well. Those were the two mission strands that didn't get as much focus. Now, workforce and economic development didn't see a direct hit as much, although they did see some funding reductions. But community service really was sort of targeted, if you will, by the legislature and the administration in terms of reduction. And so what we've seen is several of our colleges have taken the courses that they formerly offered in community service through the credit program, and they have taken them out of the credit program and they've made them a fee-based community service program. Now, the challenge for that is that that's not an easy migration. It's especially not an easy migration if you have previously been receiving state financial support through credit funding for those programs. And it's also a problem in that if you migrate them to community service and you're able to offer them, in some cases you may have to raise fees so high that they become undesirable for people to take. So what we have agreed, because a number of CEOs up and down the state have expressed concern about this, and some colleges, as you can imagine, are hit worse than others. Those tend to be colleges where those community service programs were pretty robust in the past. They have said, and I mentioned earlier today when I talked about repeatability, that combined with the de-emphasis of community service is really a hardship for them. So we've agreed in the next cycle to take a look at community service programming and fee-based community service programming, and to consider a variety of options, including an option that would allow a college to place fee-based community service students in the same classes that regular credit students are taking. So they'd be sitting side by side. Now, without going into immense detail, let me give you an example. If a college is offering music majors a choir class for credit, then there may be, I'm going to make these numbers up, there may be 50 credit students that are music majors that want to enroll in choir. However, there may be another 30 or 40 or 50 community members who would like to sing in that same choir and would be willing to pay for a community service course and then sing in the choir. So you'd have students that were enrolled in both community service and credit-based program in the same class. Now, that's not as easy as it sounds. Nothing in California ever is. So there are some regulations and some rules that are going to need to be looked at in terms of that. But that is a conversation we're having, and it is, Joseph, an area we're going to look at in the coming year. The second area, any questions on that? The second area that Member Belaski asked about earlier was our leadership development program that we've been having conversations with the University of California, Davis over. The board will recall that we went to UC Davis months and months ago because what we found was that over the past decade or more in California, there have been a number of attempts to enhance leadership development activities in California community colleges. And unfortunately, none of those have really taken root since the program that was at Berkeley years and years ago was closed when then Professor Pat Cross retired, and often is the case in university programs of that kind. When the missionary faculty retires, often they redirect those resources someplace else. So after that, there was an organization called CCLDI, Community Colleges for Leadership Development, that attempted to start a program at Claremont and then at University of San Diego. There was some work done initially at Riverside, but all of these sort of ebbed and flowed mainly because of a lack of financial support. So working with the foundation, we approached the Hearst Foundation and were awarded $150,000 of seed money to begin conversations on a leadership and policy development program to be housed at the University of California, Davis. We have had a task group of our office and UC Davis working on this for about the last 6 months to a year. In the last couple of months, UC Davis has committed another $100,000 to the initial effort. And so probably shortly after the first of the year, we'll announce the Center for Leadership and Community College Leadership and Policy Development at the University of California, Davis. Now, it will dovetail in with probably one of the premier PhD in community college leadership programs in the state called the Candel program at UC Davis. So they already have a graduate level program in community college leadership in existence, and they have a long-standing and very successful institute on K-12 leadership development that they've had underway for quite some time. So Dr. Harold Levine, the head of the School of Education at UC Davis, and Chancellor Katehi have both been outspoken in their support for California community college leadership and policy development. The other challenge the board will recall we've talked about in the past is that we often have policy development under the dome created too often by input from a variety of think tanks, often that have third-party funding and sometimes third-party vested interests. So we have believed for quite some time that an independent University of California-based research program for community colleges would help inform legislative and policy development in the state as well. So that is in development. I'm very, very encouraged. As you can imagine, at some point that will become a UC Davis initiative, and although we'll be involved from an advisory capacity, we'll step completely out of that. It does need to have independence, but California's community college system, the largest in the world, deserves to have leadership and policy development support from the University of California, similar to what you see at the University of Texas in Austin for community colleges in not only Texas but across the country. So that's a pretty quick update on that, and we hope to be back with a whole lot more after the first of the year. Okay? All right. And then I'll turn to the last tab in your book on board initiatives. The board will recall that you had a wonderful presentation arranged by Vice President bomb on the Constitution, and the Supreme Court Justice Kennedy and the Annenberg School have been heavily involved in really bringing that issue to the forefront. Behind the final tab is another initiative that's been ongoing for about the last couple of years called the Democracy Commitment. And you're going to get a more detailed report of this because the missionary, if you will, behind this is the president of De Anza College. And so when we go to Foothill De Anza in November, he's going to come forward, Dr. Murphy, and give you an update on this program. But very quickly, there are about 20 of our colleges that are part of an effort currently, including more than 200 nationwide, that if you look at this first that paragraph at the top of the page, it gives you a pretty quick idea what they're attempting to do, which is to provide a platform for the development and expansion of community college programs, projects, and curricula aiming at engaging students in civic learning and democratic practice across the country. The goal of the program is to have every graduate of an American community college have an education in democracy. So this initiative is one that we've been quite supportive of, and I think what you'll hear from the president at De Anza in November is that this thing is ready to go to the next level, and what we hope to see is instead of 20, more like 50 or 100 of our colleges ultimately participating in this. I think probably the poster child for why this is important was Proposition 30. Most people said Proposition 30 didn't have a chance. Even the ones who were optimistic said that if it passed, it would pass by 1/10 or 1/4% of the vote. And when they did the postscript on Prop 30, what they found was it passed by 4 or 5 percentage points, and the 4 or 5 percentage points were the late voters, young voters, college students up and down the state who realized the linkage between Prop 30 and a higher education and went to the polls for the first time in record numbers. Young voters have historically not gone to the polls, so most people think Prop 30 became a reality in California because students, young voters, stepped up. This project is obviously designed to help more and more young people in the state understand democracy and the importance not only of voting, but of public service like all of you around this table. So it's an exciting proposition, and you're going to hear more about it, and we certainly appreciate the board's support of civic engagement as you've demonstrated in your meetings in the past.
You know, as a teacher of political science, I see all the time the cynicism that does exist with many young students. And we need to make every effort to turn that cynicism into actually having them participate in a meaningful way for civic action. And in order to do that, we need to understand better the processes that are used in our democracy, our foreign democracy in the United States, and compel them to make change rather than to accept politics as usual is just something that they've got to live with. So this is an important project, and you know, last spring, you know, as we mentioned, I think last meeting, Jeff Baum set up helped arrange with Catherine Jameson a visit by Anthony Kennedy to the Annenberg Center, and he said to us that he was very much interested in participating in something like this, in civic action, and he is from California, so he's particularly interested in doing it with California, and more specifically with California community college students. So, you know, it's an opportunity that I think we take advantage of, and next meeting, when we're down at De Anza, then we'll be able to have more discussion on that.
Right, yeah, I want to emphasize that. It was when he was out in Rancho Mirage, we arranged a meeting with a group working with College of the Desert with about 25 community college students. And the light went on saying, if you want to strengthen our democracy, an important pathway through that is to engage the community college student population. And it's not just about getting people to mobilize and decide to vote. It's more about creating a fundamental understanding and appreciation of the constitutional foundation of this nation and what makes our nation different than other nations. And he did a private seminar from them on the Miranda case and why you have certain rights as an American that you may not have. And he even cited that scene in the Captain Phillips movie that Tom Hanks was in, where the Somali terrorists were captured at the end. And when they were, the first thing that they did with that Somali terrorist, that head of the gang, was read him his rights, so that, because to participate in our system and our democratic way of life, you do have certain rights as an individual and a human being. And it's important to, just the passion that Justice Kennedy expressed in helping try to infuse within the next generation and generations beyond an understanding of those values is important to the future of the nation.
And I might just add one more thing before I turn over to Member Budnick, is that he didn't just happen to pick out Miranda. He picked Miranda out because, in his view, it is one of those cases, and the Fifth Amendment is one that is understood by many, many people throughout this country. You can ask them about the Third or even the Eighth Amendment, and maybe you'll get a blank stare. But the Fifth Amendment, the right to counsel, is something that is understood. Now, the Supreme Court did take up a case in the late 90s to try to overturn or change that, and they had a 9-0 vote in opposition to that. They wanted to maintain the Miranda warning. And they did that emphatically because, as Justice Kennedy said that day, part of the role of the judicial branch and the Supreme Court justices is to help with good government. And good government occurs when people are on the same page, not necessarily on the issues and the various positions, but just simply on the platform, the law that exists to help facilitate that discussion, that debate over different perspectives. Member Budnick?
I'm very much interested in what you guys are doing around students and their ability to mobilize and change their own futures. So anything in the future, I'm in. Please let me know. And Chancellor Harris, if you have any one-pager, article, press release, anything on kind of the how Prop 30 went down and the students' role in that, I'd love to take that and use it in a few different ways.
The one last bullet point I'd make, too, is September 17th is Constitution Day, and it's actual a nationwide effort to help rediscover that, and there'll be a lot of materials, and Dr. Jameson, when she was with us last and passed out the materials, reminded everybody of that, and then Chancellor Harris says he'll put out a statewide bulletin about this is an opportunity to engage.
Member Belansky?
When you do this in November at Foothill, would it be possible to get some additional information on the 4 California community colleges that are part of the national pilot? It would just really be interesting to know who they are and what they're involved in and doing.
Okay.
And before we wind this section up, I just want to try to tie all of this together and remind you that what we've tried to do today is bring you up to speed on the initiatives that were on this chart we provided you early this morning. Mainly student success and the restoration of access, because most of the rest of these feed into one or both of those. And again, we've given you an awful lot of material, and for that we apologize, but this has been a very helpful session for us. Your advice and counsel on all of these items, and especially on our workforce and economic development item, was very, very helpful, and we'll be back to you on many of these. And with that, turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we adjourn, we're going to go to public forum. We have a number of public commentaries. Vice President Bond?
So I just want to remind everybody that we're at public forum. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes apiece. Ms. Rangel will help keep us on track of that. And I have about, looks like about 10 cards. So I'm going to give 2 names at once so that the second person can get ready. First we have Alvin Jha, followed by Lieutenant Dan Choi. Mr. Jha, if you could come, and we'll do public comment right at the table here. at the microphone so we can capture the comments for the records. Okay, Ms. Rangel will pass those out for you. So Clarissa, if you could just walk them around, and go ahead, Mr. Jaw.
Okay, I have two documents that are either in front of you or going to be in front of you. The first one is a follow-up letter that I sent to you a week after the last session. The second one is a little summary of how I see accreditation, which I think the discussion on accreditation this morning needs coverage of. Okay, so I'll go to the follow-up letter to the previous meeting first. One of the items that I brought up was that the appointment of the special trustee was reverse engineered. The existing regulation required severe fiscal problems in order to justify appointment of a special trustee. What actually happened in reality was that the appointment of the special trustee was initiated by an outside force, namely ACCJC and Barbara Benno. And what, if you look at the letter, I have it kind of outlined as to how the appointment worked. So what happened was that you had financial problems prior to the show cause, okay? But it did not rise to the level of appointment of a special trustee. But what happened was that because of the show cause, that created the conditions for the special trustee. And it's in the new amended regulation. And what the amended regulation states is that it's just appointment of a special trustee is justified if it's in jeopardy of losing accreditation, which would create severe fiscal problems. So the severe fiscal problems were created by the sanctions, okay? The next item I want to talk about is the transition to the back to local control. And basically, it's very simple to make the initial steps. And on the back of that page, I said, what you can do right now is end the secret meetings of the special trustee where he meets with himself, obey the San Francisco Community College District policy and Brown Act requirements for open meetings and transparency. The second thing to do is invite those board members to the special trustee's private board meeting. Okay, very simple step towards the transition. Finally, I'd like to talk about the accreditation agency. I have a separate piece that's entitled Written Comment on Accreditation. And the very first meeting where I talked to you people, the board, was where I talked about test validity. What does a test for? Is it valid? Are what the tests does it correspond to what you're trying to do? And basically, for the accreditation standards, what are they testing for? And I'll just make this very quick. I know I'm running out of time.
Cutting into the next guest time, so we'll be seeing your letter. Yes,
Okay,
thank you very much.
I think it makes it clear.
Lieutenant Dan Choi, followed by Karen Saganor. Lieutenant Choi.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellors, and Honorable Members. My name is Lieutenant Dan Choi. I served in the U.S. Army after graduating from the United States Military Academy at West Point with a degree in Arabic and environmental engineering. I served in the Triangle of Death, the most dangerous part of Iraq, and some would say the most dangerous part of the world at the time, in an extended tour in 2006 and 2007. When I came back home, I was so bewildered, I was so lost, I was so without mentors. All I wanted to do was to restart my life, but all I could think about was ending my life. When you talk about the students that are in need of mentors, look at me and see me. I'm somebody who has survived. And in these years, in these very difficult years, I've only found healing by reaching out to the fellow veterans that needed my help, to hear that story, not just by people like Robin Williams or actors and activists and musicians, but by people of stature, politicians, appointed citizens like yourselves that are going places or have been places. If you have mental health issues, it's important to be honest and have a dose of integrity about them. Only you can save those lives. It's not up to the musicians, it's up to the politicians. And so I myself, for those veterans, those 1,500, they can cry on my shoulder. I will hold their hand. We have one of only two at CCSF, City College of San Francisco, 2 in the nation, full-time VA medical clinics. We're not talking about the 60 plus out of the 113 that have veterans resource centers. We're talking about places where people can heal from PTSD and military sexual trauma and survivor guilt, anxiety and depression, sleeplessness, all the things that I myself, and this is the first time that I'm able to say this publicly, I have gone through all of that. I have been through hell and back. I want to serve. I want to continue to be there. I want to save my school from this accreditation crisis and the enrollment crisis. I'm not stopping here. I got 5 of the 11 supervisors in the county of San Francisco to sign up as non-credit enrollees during this enrollment crisis. It's the Kanye West effect. It is the James Franco effect. They want to go to class with us, and we want to organically, naturally, save those particular classes that are important to our communities. I'm not here to give speeches and blanket stereotype judgments. I'm here to work with you. I will go to your school. I will be there with you. When the veterans say that they don't want to get those resources, it's not just because of the stigma of disability. It is because they mistrust government for a good reason. The government that sent them over to war, veterans put this country first. It's time for all of us to make that substantive stance. I will be there for you. Thank you for your time. I salute you for your service. I stand with you shoulder to shoulder to save lives.
Thank you, Lieutenant Choi. Karen Saganor, followed by Dr. Hanson.
A librarian at City College. I just thought I'd give you an informal update. I know you've had some more formal updates. Events are unfolding in 2 environments, direct communication between City College and ACCJC, and of course the legal proceedings. And these 2 areas are interconnected. You'll remember in June that the ACCJC appeal panel decided the commission did their work correctly when they voted to terminate City College. However, they did remand one issue back to the commission. While we were waiting for the commission to decide that one issue, that was the point at which ACCJC asked the California Superior Court to stay, that is, delay the legal proceedings until after the commission's decisions. Judge Karnow heard that motion on July 16th. He asked ACCJC when the commission would decide about the remand and whether that decision might put City College back to where it was before show cause, thus mooting the case. ACCJC at that point could not say when the remand would be decided, maybe a few weeks, a month. The judge denied the motion from the bench. In fewer than 3 working days after that, the commission's decision about the remand was announced. City College had not, they said, reached full compliance. At that point, our administration and special trustee decided to apply for restoration status, and you know those parts. Right now, the college, the faculty included, is working very hard on a full self-evaluation that's due in just a few weeks. Meanwhile, in the California Superior Court on August 8th, Judge Karnow asked ACCJC and the city attorney to try mediation. A nationally renowned mediator offered his services gratis, but ACCJC declined, telling the judge that ACCJC is an adjudicating body, quote, just like your honor, that mediation would not be appropriate, and said that it was inappropriate for the judge to even suggest mediation. So that was in August. This Wednesday of this week, the next piece in the legal hearings, Judge Karnow will hear motions for summary judgment. Any issue not decided this week goes to trial on October 27th. In all of this, the legal cases, the stuff with ACCJC, there's 2 aspects of specific significance I want to bring to your attention. One is that ACCJC claims that the appeals panel had already given City College's opportunity for redress. No need for any court to hear the case. But we know that this appeal panel was not independent from the people it was supposed to review. In July, I mentioned to you all that its chair, Bill McGinnis, had presented with Dr. Bino, including a presentation advising City College trustees, so they have a close bond. But we also now know that Dr. Pino actually steers consulting work his way, and further that when Bill McGinnis filed conflict of interest forms with his own district. He listed ACCJC as an organization that employs him as a consultant. So if I had more time, I could tell you all kinds of other stuff that shows that ACCJC's claim that it has been independently validated by this independent body, but in fact they appointed the body. It's not an independent body at all. It's not a substitute for legal review. The second piece I want to point out to you is that ACCJC is demanding that City College come into full compliance with every single standard. This requirement of 100% compliance is unparalleled. No other colleges, including no new colleges applying for accreditation, other colleges on show cause, no one else is held to that same a level of perfection. Only City College. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Edward Simon Hansen, followed by Dr. Anita Greer.
I want to thank my colleagues for driving quite a long distance to come address you today. And I also want to thank you. In particular, I want to thank this body for your last meeting, the amendment of the resolution on extending the special trustee. You amended the resolution to request that a plan for reinstating the board be submitted for your November meeting. And I really drove this way to be able to say thank you, you listened. There's a lot of issues going on at City College. The last 2 years have been incredibly turbulent and disruptive, in particular to the educational environment at City College. At present, our student enrollment is down 25% since this time last year, which was down from the year prior. There are significant declines across statewide in enrollment, but City College is definitely suffering from this accreditation issue on top of the regular challenges that all of you are facing in your colleges and communities. We've also had a difficulty in these last couple of years with attracting staff and having staffing freezes. One half of your college is your students, the other is your instructors, your administrators, your department chairs, your classified staff. We've been in a hiring freeze for a couple of years, and now we're having a hard time attracting people to come back to us. All of this partially because of the pallor of the accreditation and an approach which has decided to extend things in short bursts. We'll come up with a restoration plan that will be for 2 years. We'll come up with a 6-month extension. At this point, I am really imploring you that when that November plan comes forward, that you look at it for its temporal consequences. If the answer is at this point for City College, which will be the easy answer, quite honestly, for a board of this size, to say, we'll ask for another study and we won't come up with a resolution that gets us out of this mess. If we end up extending it, we're going to see our enrollment continue to go down. We're going to have a harder time attracting full-time faculty, attracting qualified people to come, because the answer always comes with a caveat, and it's the same caveat you've probably seen in every article about City College. If it loses its accreditation, the college will be forced to close. That's the message we're putting out, and you're in an executive role for this college. You are running this college right now, and your role is one that could at least turn around and put a temporal sequence and a stamp of City College has a bright future for it. You will see some of the wonderful things that come from City College. You've seen it. We are here. We are doing a great job educating. We have higher than average state transfer rates. I'm asking you that in this area you look very thoughtfully at the next step that the board takes, and when that plan comes forward to you, analyze it for what is going to be the consequence over the long term, because we have to come to a resolution promptly. Every month we wait, we end up having more problems we have to solve. Thank you.
Trustee Anita Greer, followed by Roger Scott. Trustee Greer.
Good afternoon, Chancellor Harris, President Baca, and members of the Board of Governors. I've spoken to the Board of Governors on several occasions, and I continue to oppose the rationing of education to the people who need it the most and calling it student success. I also continue to believe that education and democracy are inseparable, a view that this distinguished decision-making body clearly doesn't share. I believe in the value of civil discourse, and I believe in the bureaucratic absurdity that City College of San Francisco is not ready for our 8-person democratically elected Board of Trustees to resume power. It is fact, not conjecture, that CCSF has provided a high-quality, comprehensive education to the people of our great diverse and progressive city since 1935. Our college has had some problems, but we have essentially solved them. However, we still have a crisis in enrollment. Since I don't see much passion for democratic principles among your leaders, my primary message to you at this point is simple and pragmatic. Our students and the general public will be reluctant to attend City College of San Francisco or to believe that we are a stable and functioning college as long as the members of the Board of Trustees are denied the policy-making power the people have elected us to exercise. How much imagination and common sense does it take to recognize that your undue caution and your anti-democratic reasoning are prolonging this crisis? Listen to your conscience. Apply the critical thinking skills that educators talk so much about, and bring the Board of Trustees back now. Thank you.
Roger Scott, followed by Timothy Killikelly.
Yes, good afternoon. I join my friends and colleagues in urging you to advocate for the Amiano and Bonta bills and to restore the City College Board of Trustees to its rightful policymaking role. I also urge you to actively support re-energizing the California Master Plan for Higher Education. I would like to be wrong, but I don't think Chancellor Harris and a majority of this Board of Governors are committed to making public education accessible and affordable to the people of California. When many of us in the City College community were outraged by the ACCJC's imposing the show cause sanction and providing no real due process challenge to what we regarded as an absurdly harsh and unwarranted sanction, Chancellor Harris responded, quote, "City College must come into compliance with the same operational, governance, and educational standards that all 112 California community colleges are expected to meet," close quote. Special Trustee Agrella's response was almost verbatim. Considering Chancellor Harris and Special Trustee Agrella's public sector salaries and pensions and administrative experience, can't we expect more wisdom and vision and allegiance to the people from these financially successful educators? I think righteous indignation is a rational response to California going from first to 47th in the nation in per pupil funding. The average recipient of a four-year degree now owes $30,000. The student debt is more than $1 trillion now, and careerist administrators with inflated salaries are telling us that the California Master Plan for Higher Education is dead or outdated. My faith in public higher education is strong and personal. My parents lived less than a mile from the Texas Tech campus, and when I enrolled, tuition was $25 a semester. That was 1954, by the way, before many of you were born. My teachers at Texas Tech respected and welcomed a juvenile delinquent kicked out of high school 6 times in 5 semesters, and I had a BA in 3 years. I think it's reasonable to demand that others have the same opportunities I've had. 3 degrees, not one single loan, student loan, and the opportunity to teach in 4 countries and 5 states. I believe my criticism of the ACCJC and Board of Governors is justified, although I respect the wisdom and wit of a Texan's prayer that goes like this: God help me to find the truth and save me from those who found it. When future historians write about Chancellor Harris, I hope they won't simply record that he had an EDD degree from Nova University and that his salary at Los Rios Community College District was the highest of all the community colleges in California, but that as community college chancellor, he succeeded in activating and implementing the California Master Plan for Higher Education, which generated an educational renaissance in California, ensuring that higher education would be affordable and accessible to all. You could serve the people's educational needs and also repudiate the criticism of a cranky old malcontent like me by doing the right thing and showing that maybe that I have a bigger mouth and brain. I hope you'll make history the right way by serving the people. Thank you.
Next is Charlene Jackson, followed by Otto Pippinger. Ms. Jackson is first.
Tim Killikelly, I think you said my name.
Pardon me?
Tim Kilkelly.
Tim Killikelly?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I went right past you. Sorry about that, Tim.
I'm right here.
Yes. Tim Killikelly, followed by Charlene Jackson.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak. I'm AFT 2121, president of the local faculty union at City College of San Francisco. And I'm here to make several different points. I guess I'm going to pick up on your last discussion about democracy. It was kind of interesting to me, and mobilizing people. I've actually worked with some of you here, helping create a voter registration statewide. Linda, how are you? We helped work on creating a statewide project that registered over 200,000 people here in the state of California between 2003 and 2009. So I'm familiar with this territory. I'm a political scientist as well. And I found it very ironic because here we are asking that the Board of Governors, the Board of Trustees, we return to power at City College of San Francisco, where currently they do not even have any, they don't have any meetings. There's no meetings of these folks. Even Compton, where the accreditation was taken away, the boards are still meeting. There is no meeting. I ask at every public comment, I ask Special Trustee Agrella, where are the meetings? And also, in terms of the democracy as a whole, taking the big picture here, one of the key things about our Constitution, I would always say, would be the system of checks and balances. There has to be a check somewhere. And the fact is that the ACCJC falls in a very interesting category of a group that is private with a public function. And it falls in this kind of weird crack in the system. And so you are the check. So you need to take your role seriously and be that check. It's easy to say the right thing, but you need to do the right thing. You need to do it. You need to stop the monopoly of ACCJC, which you have the authority to do. You should know that most other states do not have a rule where there is a monopoly for the accreditor. Recently, you should also know that it just was revealed, they admitted that no one on their visiting team wanted to have show cause, which has created all this mess. No one, they've admitted it. There was another document that also came out in the court papers that has not gotten much publicity yet, but the scorecard statewide. When Dennis Herrera in the lawsuit brought this out and to try to show educational quality, the ACCJC responded, and you can check it out in the court papers. They said that the scorecard to show educational quality was not relevant to the issues in the case. The educational quality at City College of San Francisco was not relevant to the accreditation crisis at City College. Something is wrong. Two more points, very quick.
You have to be very quick.
Accreditation task force report. We're still looking for that. It's done somewhere. We'd like to see what it looks like. And I would also like to reiterate what someone else said about the restoration process going on right now. People really need to understand what a nightmare this is. The fact that substantial compliance is not, I want you to understand this, substantial compliance with accreditation standards will not be enough to keep City College accredited under restoration process. Under every other process, it would be. This rule and this restoration would only apply to City College at this point, and no college under that system could be accredited with substantial compliance. That is simply outrageous. You need to be the check.
I need you to
Please.
wrap up your comments.
Thank you.
You're out of time. Charlene Jackson, followed by Otto Pippinger.
Good afternoon, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. For the past 2 years, I've been a part-time student at City College of San Francisco. I'm a paramedic major, and coming into this field happened after my 14-year marriage failed. I thought I'd be married forever to a military officer, and as we all know, life happens. So I needed to figure out how to educate and train myself to be able to support myself. And I've done that through City College. Little brief history. My family came to Travis Air Force Base in 1976. I'm a military brat. My father served in the Air Force for over 30 years, and I'd like to say my mother served much longer. She's been married to my father for more than 50 years, and that's quite admirable. And graduated from Benton High School in 1980, and ended up, after my marriage failed, coming back home, as we all do, to kind of figure out what I was going to do and how to heal and move forward. And I found City College. I live in Berkeley, and there's a wonderful school available, private school available in Berkeley that's thousands of dollars. And accruing that debt was something that I could not do. So City College was available, and City College has supported me not only in accruing the academic skills and the technical skills I need to be a paramedic, but also financially. My books, tuition, even my transportation on BART through the various programs. In addition to making this transition to the working world, it's been a little bit scary because I'm in my early 50s. And the thought of climbing in and out of an ambulance and taking care of people was overwhelming. But fortunately, because of the positive experiences and the quality of education I've been accruing through City College, I'm ready. I've already completed my EMT, Emergency Medical Technician. I take my National Registry exam this month, go into the field for 6 months or longer, and then I'm ready to be invited back to apply to paramedic school. I'm optimistic City College will be there. I'm optimistic about being a contributing, tax-paying citizen. Looking forward to that, actually. And I hope none of you ever need any of my services, but if you do, you're confident that I'm well-trained and capable of taking care of you. Thank you for your attention.
Otto Pippinger. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Otto Pippinger. I'm a second-year history student, and I just want to speak briefly about the effects of class cancellations and the climate of austerity that hangs over my school and its effects on the students, the effects of this very specific idea about what education should be. It's September, and as you've heard, enrollment is down by another 25%, and I see fewer and fewer of my friends and acquaintances around the campus. They're being punished by class cancellations that they cannot anticipate, and these cancellations are then impacting their ability to receive financial aid. They're not taking enough credit hours once you subtract cancellation, and frankly, they are leaving. We've seen that enrollment is not being picked up by other community colleges. These people are going home. They are going home to dead-end jobs or to homelessness, some of them. They are returning to countries that they had wanted to leave. City College has provided for me and for many others a variable educational structure, something that we can come back to and return to in time. And as we're being pushed away, we don't really come back. And City College is one of the most profoundly transformative institutions I have ever encountered. It has saved my life, and it has saved others. I have been homeless. I was a drug addict for many years. And, you know, how can I define the value of just community college in transforming my life? I suppose in terms of the money that it provides to the city, City College is the only place where I have ever seen class mobility take place as I've seen it described. It changes people's lives. And there are other measures, there are other institutions, but City College, in my experience, is unique in not being palliative, in not being a stopgap measure, but in earnestly taking people's lives and allowing them to change them to be whatever they'd like them to be, without debt, without any heinous cost. I have no other options in City College, and that's all I can say. I hope that you guys will help us in allowing the Board of Trustees to be reinstated and in keeping my school around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Before we adjourn, Clarissa, do you have anything that you'd like to communicate to us?
She gave it to me.
Okay.
So
Counselor?
the board will be picked up at 4:30. And then tomorrow morning, the band will pick the board up at 7:45 for the 8 a.m. Breakfast and awards ceremony for your sustainability awards at the Sheraton. So 4:30, the van will pick you up this afternoon for dinner, and 7:45 tomorrow morning.
Meeting is adjourned.
Or one of these.
Retreat.
I won't use it, so I
Definitely use it. I love these.
Spend every minute.
Yeah.